Hi guys, and welcome back to another Premier League video. Now this video is going to be the last Premier League video of the season, as I'm reacting to the predictions I made all the way at the start of the season. And again, as the Championship one was, there were some terrible predictions here. There were some that were okay and that I was happy with. But hopefully I can do better next season, because I know I can do a lot better than I did here. Before we get into the video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell for more Premier League content. Let's get in to my predictions. And in 20th place were Norwich. I predicted them in 18th. So I had them to go down, didn't have their place correct, but happy that, I had them in the right area. They did get relegated. However, I did have a bit too much confidence in them. I thought this time they'd come up, have a bit more of an identity, learn from their mistakes last time where they finished bottom. But there was none of that. They had no identity. They had a tough run of fixtures to start off the season, fair enough. But they didn't really recover from then on, and it sort of continued in the same pattern. Daniel Farke picked up his first win, then he was sacked. Dean Smith brought in, had an okay start, but that very quickly dropped off. And yeah, they just really struggled this season with a lack of identity, and their lack of quality really shone through towards the back end of the season. They couldn't really pick up any points. And yeah, they definitely deserve to go down. So in 20th place was Norwich. In 19th place came Watford. And where did I predict them to finish? 19th. Very happy with this one, got it correct. And again, a second team getting relegated that I had in the relegation zone. So I've done quite well so far. Watford, at times, they looked like they could cope in the Premier League. That front three of Sarr, Dennis, João Pedro, having Josh King around as well. They had some very good attacking players. But the thing that let them down throughout the whole season was keeping the ball out the back of the net. They just couldn't manage it. They went through so many managers, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4. But Roy Hodgson took them at the end of the season, couldn't really get anything going. That was probably his last managerial position. So good luck to Hodgson. He couldn't get them to stay up. And they did record some big wins through the season. They beat Man United, they beat Everton with big score lines, but at the end of the season, they didn't have the consistency and they didn't have the defensive quality. And I do worry for Watford, because they're going to have to invest heavily next season, as I think they're going to lose quite a few of their players. That front three of Sarr, Dennis and João Pedro, I expect them all to be going, because they're all very good players. They could all cope in the Premier League in a stronger squad. So I think that they're going to have to bring some players through Watford, which could go one of two ways. Obviously, it could go really well. They could bounce right back, or they could struggle to adapt and it might take them a bit longer. However, I'd be willing to think they'll go through another 3 or 4 managers next season and come straight back up. So in 19th place was Watford. In 18th place was Burnley. And I predicted them in 20th. So I got all 3 relegated teams correct. Very happy with that. Just had Norwich and Burnley in the wrong order. Now, Burnley have been in the Premier League for a 6-year stint. And through that, they always pretty much seem to be in the conversation for relegation at the start of the season and throughout. They were always sort of there or thereabouts in a bit of a battle. But they always survived. Sean Dyche always would have some good runs of games, pull them through it, and they'd be fine. This season, it was a bit different. Sean Dyche was sacked after 9 years in that job. So he has done a very good job there. And in hindsight, I'm sure they wish that they'd have kept him, because now they've been relegated. And if they had him in the Championship, I think they'd have a very good chance at bouncing back. However, they're going to have a bit of a rebuild. There will be some players that will move on, because Maxwell Cornet will not be there. Weghorst probably won't be knocking about in the Championship either. Some of the centre-backs, they've got some good assets there that aren't going to be in the Championship. And I do worry for them as financially, they don't spend much. They do have quite an ageing squad. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can bounce back straight away or if they take a while, maybe even after parachute payments. And then I really do worry for them. I think Burnley need to bounce back within the next 2 seasons, or we might not see them in the Premier League again for a long time. However, Burnley are going to have to see how they cope in the Championship and going to have to try and hold on to as many players as possible or invest in the squad, which I'm not willing to put my money on them investing in the squad. So it's holding on to players for them and getting the right man in to guide them forward. Burnley relegated in 18th. In 17th place were Leeds, and I predicted them to finish 7th. This was a very, very bad call. A lot of newly promoted teams don't tend to do better in their second season than they do in their first. They always tend to go back a little bit. After Bielsa's first season in the Premier League, I was expecting them to, push on. But it didn't happen. A lot of injuries to an already thin squad led Leeds to, a relegation battle for quite the back end of the season, but they did drop very quickly into it. Bielsa was sacked. In came American Jesse Marsch, and he pulled them to safety in the end. But on the last day, they were in the relegation zone. They managed to escape that. Well done to them. They beat Brentford 2-1 on the final day for safety. Jesse Marsch, he had a decent run, to be honest. 4 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses. But those 5 losses, quite a few of them came against the top sides. And if he doesn't get too many injuries next season, I'm sure they'll be away from a relegation battle. However, they are going to have to add to this squad now because it's very thin and Bielsa liked having a small squad. However, Jesse Marsch, if he doesn't want the same to happen as what happened last season with all the injuries, then he is going to need to bring in some reinforcements just in case they do get injuries. They've got other players that can play. Leeds survived in 17th. In 16th was Everton, and I predicted them in 9th. Another very poor prediction, but after their last season finish of 10th place under Ancelotti, I was expecting them to carry on progressing. In steps agent Rafa, obviously very strong links to Liverpool, and everything just went pretty terribly. I think they started off okay, but that soon turned very poor and they just could not win at all, dropped down the table. And in January, Rafa was sacked with the club in 15th. Lampard comes in and a lot of people weren't sure about this. I think a lot of Everton fans were happy, but me as a neutral, I was sort of thinking it's not smart for Lampard, as if he takes this club with very high expectations down, I don't see him getting a Premier League job for a very long time. However, if he keeps them up, they're expected to stay up, so what's really in it for him? He didn't get off to a great start. However, a very good run towards the end of the season, 3 wins in 5 games, kept them up with 1 game to go. However, there were points in the season. Now, I didn't believe that they were ever going to go down until they dropped into the relegation zone and had the harder fixtures on paper. I thought they were done for, to be honest. But Lampard, he got that fighting spirit out of them and he led them to safety. So, good job from Lampard. However, they do need some reinforcements, especially at the back. They did have some injuries to Calvert-Lewin, players like that. But they need some reinforcements at the back, as defensively, I wasn't too impressed with Everton this season. And if they do want to be, heading towards the top half of the table again, they spend a lot of money. They've got these development plans for a new stadium. They really need to be investing their money wisely, because the amount of money this club has wasted is incredible. Whoever is in charge of bringing in players is doing a terrible job, and that needs to change very soon. However, Everton finished in 16th place. In 15th was Southampton, and I had them in 17th place. And I looked miles off it, as they had a brilliant run in the middle of the season that had them in the top half of the table. And it didn't look like they were gonna stop going, really. They were in such good form. However, one win out of their last 12 league games dropped them right down the table. And if that long run of good form hadn't been as long as it was, I'm sure they would have ended up in a relegation battle. However, that run really helped them out. And they do seem to be that sort of team that will have a very good run through a part of the season that keeps them safe, and then a very poor run. It's just sort of the way Southampton go, but they'll really want to work on being consistent, because if they'd have kept that form up, they would have easily been in the top half, and that would be a very good season for a Southampton side that are relatively small in the Premier League. They never really spend big. They always sort of work with what they've got. They don't really have a very good Premier League squad. I'd actually say out of all the squads in the Premier League, it's probably one of the worst ones. So Hasenhüttl is still doing a good job, but he'll just hope that he can get some more consistency out of them next season. Southampton finish in 15th place. In 14th place were Aston Villa, and I had them in 13th, so not far off here. And after a very impressive summer where they brought in Buendia, Leon Bailey, Danny Ings, and then some defensive reinforcements, Axel Tuanzebe and Ashley Young, you sort of thought that they were going to, move towards the top half. I know a lot of people had them finishing in the top half, and some even thought they were going to, contend for Europe. However, I wasn't so confident in them. Dean Smith didn't do a very good job this season at all. In November, he was sacked with the club sitting 16th. And if he'd have stayed, I think they would have been in a relegation battle and in quite a lot of trouble this season. However, Gerrard was then brought in, did okay at the start, struggled for consistency. And yeah, I'm not too sure what to think of Gerrard's tenure. He's obviously got a big pull, because in January, Lucas Digne and Coutinho both came in, and that was sort of the trigger, hoping that they could push towards the top half again, sort of save their season. But it didn't end up happening. And yeah, I'm not really sure what to think of Gerrard at the moment. Again, he's got a very strong pull because he's Steven Gerrard. Villa have a lot of money and they spend a lot of money, so they've got the financial backing behind Gerrard. But it's just, whether he can really do well with them. We'll have to see next season. It's a full season. But if they aren't finishing top half with the amount of money they spend compared to some of the teams that have finished above them and around them, then I think he should be worrying that he might lose his job. There's also Everton as well. That's another team that are down there that they spend so much money. And a lot of teams finishing above them don't spend anywhere near as much. So for me, Villa, very disappointing season to finish 14th, along with Everton. Both very, very disappointing seasons. Villa, 14th place. And moving on to a club that did do very well with what they had, Brentford in 13th. What a great season. I predicted them in 16th. They didn't really invest much in the summer. They only spent around 30 million, which for a newly promoted side would normally see them go straight back down. However, a memorable opening day victory over Arsenal set the tone for a great season. They had some very, very good highlights in there. They beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in a massive, massive victory, 4-1 that ended. And they were just so good throughout the season. They were very good to watch. They got a big draw against Liverpool. At home, they were fantastic for a lot of it. And I'm really looking forward to see how Brentford get on next season, as I think they were such a good addition to the Premier League. A January signing of Christian Eriksen topped off the season. It was a brilliant, brilliant signing, and he did very, very well while he was there, because they did hit a bit of bad form, but as soon as he came in, that went. He solved their problems. There was a lot more creativity from then on. And credit to Thomas Frank, the way he has ran this club, the way the owners have ran the club, invested wisely. They have a very good identity. They know exactly what they want from their players. And yeah, it really works. Brentford, great season from you. I've actually really enjoyed watching Brentford. They've probably been one of my favourite teams to watch this season, just because there wasn't much expectation on them the first time in the Premier League. You know, a lot of people thought, yeah, they're gone, but well done to Brentford. 13th place finish for you. In 12th place came Palace, and I predicted them in 11th. So very close here, and predicting Palace in 11th, I think, was a very ballsy thing to do, because a lot of people thought Vieira's coming in, a lot of contracts expiring, an ageing squad, they're going to struggle. But I saw it differently. And I think that's because of some of the great, astute deals that they made in the summer. Vieira came in, 11 players' contracts expiring or had expired. And he brings in some brilliant, brilliant players. Mark Gurhey and Joachim Andersen come in at the back, and they were a great pairing throughout. Then, in attack, Edouard comes in from Celtic. Elise on a deal under 10 million from Reading. What a signing that was. He didn't play as much as I'd have liked him to, but he's going to be a great player for them. He's very, very good. And then, the icing on the cake, really. Conor Gallagher comes in on loan from Chelsea. What a revelation he was. And this ageing squad had suddenly turned into a squad full of energy, with attacking prowess, very exciting to watch. And they had a brilliant home record. They were very hard to beat. Some memorable victories over Arsenal, Spurs, taking 4 points off Man City and being the only side not to concede a goal to Man City throughout the season. It was all just testament to what a great job Vieira did this season. So Palace finished in 12th place. In 11th place came Newcastle. I had them to finish 15th, but I don't think I'd have ever got this right due to the circumstances. Steve Bruce started the season, but only lasted 8 matches, as he had no wins in his first 8, so he was sacked. In came Eddie Howe, but just before Bruce was sacked, a takeover took place, making Newcastle the richest club in the world, which there were rumours of a takeover, but I don't really think anyone thought it would happen so quickly, or some people didn't think it would happen. So that is the big factor that sort of changed this season. However, Eddie Howe came in, and in January, now a lot of people will say they're the richest club in the world, so of course they started to go up. They didn't really do that much business. They signed 4 key players. Chris Wood up front, who didn't really do much, but it took a striker off a rival. So that for me was a smart move, then. In hindsight, they didn't really need it, but it was a smart move then. They also brought in Dan Burn from Brighton, who was immense for them. Kieran Trippier, who started so well, but did get injured. And the main signing they made, Bruno Guimaraes from Lyon, he was, like Conor Gallagher, a revelation. Guimaraes came in and he did such a good job. He really lifted the crowd. He scored some key goals, getting assists. He was everywhere, and yeah, he was such a good signing. He'd have to be up there for probably one of the best January signings of the season. And Newcastle ended up being very hard to beat at home, went on a very good run of home wins as well, which broke a record for them. And Eddie Howe really took them in the right direction, gave them more of an identity, and I'm sure now there's not going to be any talk of relegation battles, as all that money is going to be, put to good use this summer. Newcastle finished in 11th place. Breaking into the top 10, in 10th place was Wolves. I had them in 14th, and I think that was quite justified, as Nuno had just left, Bruno Lage came in, and no one really knew what to expect. A dressing room leader as well, Rui Patricio went to Roma, and in comes Jose Sarr from Olympiacos. Again, nobody really knew what to expect. Seemed like they were losing a lot there. However, what a signing that turned out to be. Wolves were at one stage in contention for Europe. They were so strong, they were very hard to beat, barely conceded any goals. They had such a good defensive record. Towards the end of the season, that did drift away. They, started to lose quite a few more games, and their hopes of Europe were gone. However, they managed a top half finish. They had a very, very strong season. And the pointer for me is that if they can work on their attacking consistency, making sure they're converting more chances and creating more, and I think that will help now with Pedro Neto back from injury. He's a very, very good player. I think Wolves can be very good next season. Again, top half. And there will be a thorn in everyone's side if they can work on their attack and make sure that that is as consistent as it can be. Because defensively, they are very strong. In 10th place are Wolves. And in 9th place, and quite a surprise entry, is Brighton. I predicted them in 12th, so I did have them way clear of a relegation battle. And that was the key for Brighton this season. They've been building very well under Graham Potter. Some good signings of Mwepu and Cucurella in the summer. They sort of just wanted to stay clear of a relegation battle, because for their latest stint of the Premier League, they haven't really done that so far. And they did it very, very well. And if it wasn't for such a poor run from mid-February to the start of April, I genuinely believe they would have been contending for Europe. They were only about 5 or 6 points off European places. They had such a good defensive record. I remember at one stage of the season, they had only lost 4 games. And then they went on a big losing run. I think they lost about 5 or 6 in a row. So Brighton, if they could have picked up 2 more wins, would have been sitting in Europe so far. What an achievement that would have been. But Graham Potter has done a brilliant job there, and I'm sure they're going to want to progress next season and try and get another top half finish. In 9th place were Brighton. Now in 8th place were Leicester, and I had them finishing 5th. And you'll know why that is, because the last few seasons they have made that 5th spot their own. They keep missing out on the Champions League and I just thought more of the same. The 4 teams that I predicted in the top 4 are too strong. Now Leicester, I was quite surprised that they spent most of the season in the bottom half of the table. That was not something that I thought would happen. They've been so good over the past few years. But they really, really struggled throughout until Fofana, Jamie Vardy came back. They then started to put the pieces together. They were missing out on those players. Maddison, Barnes, both also coming into form. Towards the end of the season, they looked more like the Leicester that we've seen previously. But they'll want to try and focus now, next season, on the league, as they don't have Europe, so there's none of that Thursday night stuff going on. It's just the league and obviously domestic cups, which aren't as strenuous as Europe. So focusing on the league, Leicester will want to get back into Europe for next season. But Leicester, a quite disappointing season from them, finishing in 8th. And in 7th place were West Ham. I predicted them in 10th. And after the miracle season that Moyes pulled off last season, getting them into 6th, I did not expect them to be able to get back-to-back European seasons. I didn't think they could balance playing the league and also playing on a Thursday night, going in the cups as well. I didn't think they would be able to balance all these fixtures, but they really proved me wrong. They had such a good season, a memorable run in Europe, getting to the semi-final of the Europa League, and they'll be hoping, after finishing 7th this season, that next season in the Conference League, they can, go on another great run and try and lift that trophy at the end of the season. So in 7th place came West Ham. Now in 6th place was Man United. Such a terrible season. Now I predicted them in 3rd. And again, I feel this is justified as signings of Ronaldo, Varane and Sancho in the summer, sort of made you think they have to be getting in the Champions League with this sort of quality added to their squad. However, the main position that they needed at the start of the season, which everyone seemed to identify apart from the club, was a defensive midfielder, and they didn't bring it in. Hence why they ended up in the position that they did. They really struggled in midfield. They couldn't really keep the ball. As soon as you were, sort of past the midfield, they play quite high. You just have to run past Harry Maguire, which was quite easy. Luke Shaw had a poor season. Wan-Bissaka had a poor season. Varane was injured for a lot of it. They really had a bad season. If it wasn't for De Gea and Ronaldo, I genuinely think Man United would have finished in the bottom half. Now, Solskjaer was sacked in November after somehow avoiding the sack over the past few seasons. Ralf Rangnick came in, who, I need to say, is not a manager. He's a lot higher up. He's always in the board, in the back room. He is not a manager. He was brought in on sort of like a scouting expedition. You're going to come in, you're going to identify the problems at the club for us, then you're going to move into the back room, we'll bring someone else in, and everything's going to go well. So then, at the end of the season, Man United get rid of Rangnick, don't move him into the back room, which was the whole point of him coming into the club, because he identified that they needed 10 new additions to the squad in order to start challenging. What was the point of them bringing him in? What an absolute mess. If they weren't going to follow through with keeping him in, they have literally just wasted this season. I don't know what's going on at Man United. They have brought Erik ten Hag now in as their manager from Ajax, so they are trying another plan. But why did they not just put Rangnick upstairs and let him have a part in the club? Because that was the point of getting him in the first place. I do not know what to expect from Man United next season. We'll have to see from the transfer window what sort of positions they bring in, because there's a lot of positions in that Man United squad that need to be filled quickly. They've got a lot of players that are big personalities, big egos. It's just a very toxic dressing room. And yeah, Man United, to miss out on the Champions League was shocking considering how good their squad is on paper. But to do it in the fashion they did and be so uninspiring, and they were just very poor. So in 6th place were Man United. In 5th place, just missing out on the Champions League, were Arsenal. Now I predicted them 6th, but before the season, it was a bit of a toss-up between them and Leicester. And the reason I backed Leicester is because they've done it often recently. They've finished 5th, they've just missed out, they've been consistent. Now that doesn't mean anything. I still, in the end, decided that they'd be 6th, and I was wrong. Only off by 1 place, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now Arsenal, in the summer, they were very, very busy. They brought in Ødegaard, Ramsdale, Ben White, Tomiyasu and Lokonga, all young players. And it sort of shows you what Arteta is looking for. It gives you an idea of the identity that they want. They're adding a lot of young players to an already young squad. They're building for the future, and they don't want to just build for the future. They also want to be building for the present with young players as well. So that's why they're investing in these sort of players. Arteta was being heavily backed. And to be honest, it was a very good season for Arsenal. Now, I know they will be disappointed to have lost out on the top 4 spot to their rivals, Spurs. You know, that it was in their hands, really, Arsenal, and they let it slip. But with Arsenal currently being in the building phase that they are, they were never expected to challenge. So it's a very good season from Arsenal, and the Arteta project is it's a thing, and it really is there. And I think in the coming years they are going to be a strong squad. Just missing out though in 5th place, Arsenal. Into the first Champions League spot, 4th place, Spurs. Now, I predicted them in 8th. I was far off here. However, I don't think it was justified. I think 8th was a bit low. But top 4 was also not really in the question. They had Nuno come in the summer. He lasted until November. Really struggled. They did win their first 3 games. It was very uninspiring football, and that sort of showed very quickly. Fans were booing the team, but booing the manager when he'd make a tactical decision that they didn't agree with because of boring football. It was a complete mess. They wanted to get away from their defensive sort of, the defensive football that they had recently under like Mourinho and stuff like that, but they bring in a very defensive coach in Nuno. I don't think it was the right appointment, and I know that they didn't think it was either, because he was like their 6th choice manager. So that already left Nuno in a very difficult situation, as he probably knew himself that he wasn't the wanted man at the start. He was sacked. In comes Antonio Conte. And this is the turning point. I think if Nuno had stayed, my 8th place prediction probably wouldn't have been too far off. Conte comes in. He makes some very good signings in January. He adds 2 players from Juventus, Bentancur and Kulusevski, to their summer signings of Christian Romero, who was outstanding, Brian Hill, who didn't really play. He was on loan. He went out on loan, and he's one for the future, and Emerson Royale. But these 2 January signings were key. They really transformed the team. Conte did a brilliant job. He turned them into one of the, if not the best, counter-attacking team in the Premier League. They were so good on the break. They attacked with precision. To add to that, they were the only team not to lose to Liverpool and City this season. Brilliant achievement. They took 6 points off the ladder. They beat City twice, which is incredible. And to add to that, Heung-min Son shared but won the Golden Boot with Mohamed Salah with 23 goals. And he's not the penalty taker. All of his goals came from open play. What an achievement that is. He's the first Asian player in the Premier League to ever win the Golden Boot. So well done to him. What an achievement that is for Son. He has been a very underrated player for the past few years. I think a lot of people haven't thought, oh yeah, he's world class. He gets into the majority of teams in the world. But I really think he does. He's such a good player. So good on the break. And that's what they're playing, counter-attacking football, so he's very useful for that. What a season for Spurs, getting into the top 4. I never thought that was a possibility at the start of the season. Testament to Antonio Conte, the brilliant job he's done. And I think next season, Spurs are going to be scary. I think they're going to be a big problem for a lot of sides in the division. And I think, to be honest, they've got a chance of breaking into the top 3. So in 4th place is Spurs. In 3rd place were Chelsea. and I predicted them to win the league. I was quite off here. However, the first £100 million signing of this video, Romelu Lukaku coming into the side, I was thinking that was the cherry on top of a team that had just won the Champions League, had players like Havertz coming into form as well. They were hard to beat. Thomas Tuchel had made them very, very good. I sort of added all that together and thought, they're going to be a surprise here. City are going to drop off. Chelsea are going to take the crown. And for the start of the season, really, it looked like a possibility. It was a 3-horse race, but they dropped off. And from that little point where they dropped off, they fell behind, a lot of things started going against them. Lukaku fell out with Thomas Tuchel, which obviously isn't good when you've just splashed £100 million on a player. And then, Abramovich, the whole Russia situation, Abramovich's assets frozen, which obviously has a big effect on a lot of things to do with the club. They then couldn't renew anyone's contract, which means that a lot of players' contracts have run out and are leaving on freeze at the end of the season. And so there's all that. To add to that, domestic cups. They got to the final of both the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and they lost both of them on penalties to Liverpool. Now that's frustrating for them because they got to the final twice and came out with no trophies. So Chelsea, they had a difficult season. A lot of things didn't go great. Abramovich has now sold, new owners into the club. So we'll have to see how this progresses for next season. But I am worried that they might maybe miss out on Champions League football next season with Tuchel's man management being questioned quite a lot. They are they did struggle towards the back end of the season, and I'm just not sure how to call it next season. But for this season, I hopped on the Chelsea train at the start. There's a lot of hype. I thought, yeah, it's going to happen, but 3rd place. Now in 2nd place, just missing out on the title, were Liverpool. I predicted them in 4th. I thought after last season, they struggled and just about got into the top 4. With all the injury issues they had, I thought they'd struggle to bounce back. And I know those players that were injured would come back, but Anfield had sort of been breached. It didn't have the effect that it did have before because of the injuries. And I thought that maybe Anfield wouldn't become a fortress anymore for some reason. That was very stupid of me. And after a quiet summer as well, where they only bought in Conte from Leipzig, a lot of teams around them seemed to have better summers to me again. So I think it was justified. I didn't expect them to compete the way they did, but Klopp runs this team so well. In January, the signing of Luis Diaz was very influential. Now, they will want more numbers from him. They'll want more goal output. But whenever he got the ball, you thought something was going to happen. Mane started playing through the middle and was brilliant. Salah was brilliant for the first half of the season. Then AFCON happened and he completely ghosted. I don't really know what happened to Salah. He really struggled, and to be honest, part of me thinks that it'd been better off dropping him and bringing Jota into the team or something, just because you can't really carry a player that's not in form. It doesn't work. And I get Salah has been brilliant for ages and was brilliant at the first half of the season, and he did end up winning the Golden Boot joint with Son. He had that good of a first half of the season. But if a player's out of form, they're out of form. Don't try and carry them. And it would have been a risky move, because if it had backfired, then Klopp would have came under a lot of stick. However, they had a 14-point gap behind City at one point. They pulled that back to just 1 point. And if it wasn't for a heroic, extraordinary comeback on the final day from Man City, Liverpool would have been crowned champions. Now, adding to that, they triumphed in both domestic cups, winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, both on penalties. They also got to the Champions League final. They lost it 1-0 to Real Madrid. They were so close to perfection this season. They went the distance in everything and missed out by by 1 point in the league and 1-0 in the Champions League final. It was very, very tight margins. One thing that might concern Liverpool is their performances in these big games in the knockouts. Now, I know they won 2 of the trophies, but they'll be disappointed to miss out on the big 2, the Champions League and the Premier League. And an issue that they found in the finals was that they didn't score in any of the 3 finals they were in. Now, they won 2, so that's fine. But if they were playing a Man City in the final or something like that, I just think that they could have been breached quite easily, or even a Spurs or an Arsenal maybe. And if they'd have, they seem to put defence before attack. And obviously in the Champions League final that backfired, although they did have a lot of chances, they just couldn't finish. And Real Madrid took their chance. But yeah, Liverpool, one cause for concern was just their performances in the finals, not being able to score. However, as I say, they won 2 of them. They'll be very happy with this season, and it was a brilliant season from Liverpool. Just missing out in second place was Liverpool. And winning the league was Man City. I predicted them in second place. I really wish, hindsight, I'd have put them first, because that Chelsea train I hopped on was a bit of a push, and City are such a dominant side. But well done to City for winning the league. In comes the second £100 million player, Jack Grealish, for £105 million, and many people, including me, asked why. If anything, they needed a striker, and I mean if anything, because they were already such a good side. But a striker was always priority. They were linked with Harry Kane. So bringing in a winger that doesn't really contribute many goals didn't seem to make much sense. And to be honest, it still doesn't. He only started to really break into the squad at the end of the season, which sort of begs the question, why did you spend all that money when you could have went out and bought a striker to get some goals, to contribute to the team, to not warm the bench? Now, Grealish's performance did pick up towards the end of the season. And yeah, he did okay. He wasn't used on the final day though. And the final day was so important. They were 2-0 down to Aston Villa. At this point, Liverpool were drawing, and it looked inevitable that Liverpool were going to get a winner, which would have meant that City wouldn't have won the league, and that City would have needed to win this game. Some subs, Gundogan comes on, and he transforms this. They literally score 3 goals within 5 minutes. What an incredible, extraordinary 5 minutes of football that is. It could be some of the... That's probably the best comeback ever for Man City. It was incredible. They won the league from that. It was just... It kind of left me speechless, to be honest. I was watching it and I was like, what has just gone on? Because when they were 2-0 down, I think everyone sort of thought Liverpool have won the league here. But City, brilliant. I think they deserve to win the league, to be honest. For me, watching these two sides, City and Liverpool, I much more enjoy watching City. I love how dominant they are. The way they play football, to me, is just beautiful. Liverpool, I don't really enjoy watching. I don't know what it is, to be honest. I think I just much prefer City's style of play. But City, they win the league. They don't win any cup competitions, which is the first time since the 16-17 season, which just shows you how dominant they've been recently. And they miss out on the Champions League. They lose in the semi-final, and it was theirs. They had a brilliant run. They were 1-0 up in the game after winning the game before 4-3, I believe. So that's 5-3 on aggregate. And then Real Madrid scored 2 goals in 2 minutes, past the 90th minute. Rodrigo coming on off the bench, turns it around. They score a winner in extra time. It was just, again, extraordinary. Something I haven't really seen before. I couldn't really believe what I was watching. And a lot of City's season has been like that. But City are still waiting for that European glory, but they'll obviously be happy to lift the league trophy once again. That is 4 in 5 now for City, so very, very dominant. And they'll be hoping to add to that next season. City, top of the league, winning it first place. So, that's my review of the season and my predictions for the Premier League 21-22 season. What a season it was. It was very, very exciting throughout. A lot of seasons, the winner would normally be sorted before the final day. Relegation would normally be sorted. There wouldn't really be anything to compete for. But there was literally everything to compete for. The title wasn't decided. Top 4 wasn't decided. Relegation, 2 teams were down, but the last spot wasn't decided. The Golden Boot, top assists, clean sheets. Everything was literally to play for on the final day. So it was definitely a Premier League season to remember, especially after, obviously, COVID. It was a very, very good full season, and I think it really brought a lot of football fans together. So, brilliant Premier League season. Man City run out winners. Liverpool, Chelsea and Spurs take the other 3 Champions League spots. Arsenal and Man United in the Europa League. West Ham in the Conference League and relegated from the Premier League. Watford, Norwich and Burnley. I got all 3 of them right, so very happy with those predictions. Make sure to hit a like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell for more Premier League and football content. Now, over the off-season, I'm obviously going to be doing a lot of gaming, the F1 game, Football Manager. I might throw some FIFA in there if that's something you'd like to see. So make sure to comment down below if you'd like to see some FIFA. There's also going to be some videos, obviously, when kits come out, things like that, early Championship and Premier League predictions. There's going to be a lot of content coming out. Just sort of got to get it all together and figure out what I want to do. So if you've got any suggestions down below of content you'd like to see, then let me know. For now, I'm wrapping up the Premier League season. What a great season. And make sure, again, that you subscribe to the channel for all the content coming over the summer and next season.